Welcome to the show, everyone. Christian Ojackson here with special guest Ben Bolch, who covers UCLA for the LA Times. Ben, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, where to start with UCLA? This is a team that, a couple down years for Mick Cronin. I think he misses his precious jewel, Jaime Jaquez. Of course, last year was better. This is the year where it seems like they can really get back to that top 15 all season long level. You bring in one of the best players in the portal in Donovan Dent. You retain three starters. Tell me just kind of the overall temperature of the program right now and how Mick Cronin felt about the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, it was clear that they wanted to upgrade at point guard. Unfortunately, Dylan Andrews really struggled last season, and that was a huge limiting factor on what their ceiling and what they could do. They lost in the second round, which I think was about right for that team. This wasn't really an elite team. They had hopes that Dylan Andrews could be the player he was late in the season before, and that never really materialized. So it was clear they needed to upgrade at point guard. They went in the portal and got the best point guard available in Donovan Dent from New Mexico, and that really changed the trajectory of this team and the expectations. I mean, now I think that as you mentioned, bringing back Sky Clark, Tyler Bilodeau, and Eric Daly, three of their best players from the previous season. Now you're looking at a team that probably has Final Four expectations and ceiling. So completely changed the trajectory and the hopes of the team and the fan base.
Last year, I remember when we were talking about this roster, there was just like 12 guys that like there were just so many guys. And this year, I definitely see depth as a strength of this team, but just kind of wanted to frame this question of, do you think there was like a logjam or just kind of too much going on, or do you think Mick wanted to just play around with different pieces, see what he had as kind of, I don't know, looking forward to potentially this year of guys that were multi-year transfers?
Yeah, I mean they had a lot of turnover last year. The previous year they brought in the five European players, or I'm sorry, four, and it didn't really pan out. So he wanted, I think, to stock the roster, so to speak, with as many possible parts as possible. And I think it did take some time and some tinkering to kind of find what they wanted. I think they got to a pretty good rotation by the end of the season, but I think that this year's team is deeper, it's better, it's got a lot more weapons. I don't think we'll see a crazy playing rotation, but I think they do go 8 to 9 deep with some pretty quality players.
Let's start with Donovan Dent, Mountain West Player of the Year, 20 points, 6 assists, won a game in the tournament. Shot 41% from deep. Obviously, not a huge volume 3-point shooter. Like, he wants to get downhill. Something that really stands out to me about this fit at UCLA is New Mexico is one of the fastest teams in the country, and UCLA is definitely a slower paced half court style of team. Do you think Donovan is going to have to change the way he plays to fit with Mick, or is Mick kind of like, you go be you, Donovan, and we'll kind of adapt?
Well, interesting timing on this question because I just got off the phone with his high school coach, one of the best coaches in the country, Josh Giles at Corona Centennial High here in Southern California. And he said one of Coach Cronin's messages to Donovan while recruiting him was, we are not going to change the way you play. In fact, the only two things he really mentioned were, we want you to cut down on turnovers and we want you to become a much better defender. So in my mind, and we saw a little bit against San Diego State, that means that they are going to play faster. They are going to tailor their offense to his strengths. And I think that's a great thing because you've got some proven scorers with Eric Daly and Tyler Bilodeau and Sky Clark. So I think that's a fantastic sign for this team that they can really change their style of play and maximize Donovan Dent's strengths.
Eric Daly and Bilodeau, just two really solid forwards who can do a lot of different things offensively. Is there anything different that you expect from them this year? Any growth areas?
Yeah, I would say the big ones are for Eric Daly, it's just consistency. I mean, he'd have games where, he'd be the best player on the floor and you'd be like, wow, he could go to the NBA after this season. And he had probably, I don't know, 5 to 6 of those games last season. And then there were other games where he would have, 5 or 6 points and you're just like, what happened to him? Where is he? Why isn't he doing more? So I think they wanted to be, at least a 10-plus point scorer on a daily basis. And then Tyler Bilodeau, it's all about defense, right? We know the guy can score. We know he can shoot. It's can he defend? So with both of these guys, actually, there's an interesting twist to the story. They've both been moved down a notch. Eric Daly is now playing the 3 and Tyler Bilodeau the 4. So that could also help them. It'll be a challenge defensively, maybe a little bit for Daly to defend the 3 because he's going up against some smaller, quicker guys. But we'll see how that plays out.
Found this stat that Daly in the last 10 games of the season where UCLA went 5-5, 15 points a game in the wins, 4 points a game in the losses, which speaks to
Yeah.
that consistency, of course.
Yeah, exactly. It's they need him to be they don't need him to be like crazy productive, but they need him to be, as I said, 10 plus points, I think is kind of like the sweet spot for him. There's a lot of other guys, there's a lot of other talent, some guys who can step up. So, but don't be one of those games where you shoot, 3 for 10 and shoot and have 6 points and 2 rebounds. They need more than that.
Sky Clark escaped the depths of hell of Louisville basketball under Kenny Payne and, carves out a nice role here at UCLA. Hit 8 threes in those two NCAA tournament games. Um, Defensively, is there a step for him to take? Because I feel like it's kind of a simple role for him of you're playing alongside Donovan Dent, hit your threes, and guard.
Well, he showed in the exhibition win against San Diego State that he's become a much more athletic player. He had a putback dunk that I had to like watch the replay of to make sure it actually happened because I wasn't expecting it. But he's got crossover moves. He can make threes. He can get to the basket. He can rebound. He can defend. He's going to be a complete player, and a big reason I think that Mick Cronin has said they could have the best backcourt in the country this year. And I don't think it's crazy exaggeration. I think that it actually could come true.
Let's get into that 5 spot. So we've got Xavier Booker coming over from Michigan State, 5-star recruit, never really catches on there, and kind of fell out of the rotation completely down the end of the season. Mind you, this isn't a Michigan State video, but they were throwing out some like pretty kind of burly, slow-footed. Not 2 of the 3 guys playing out of them were just some slow-footed white guys who didn't even bring that much offensively either. And Xavier Booker had all this tantalizing upside, and I'm kind of like, why couldn't he connect with Tom Izzo and get there? What does kind of a change of scenery mean for him, and can he kind of tap into that upside that he had before?
Yeah, he's going to be a guy who's going to be asked to completely change the way he plays. He's going to be the traditional 5 now. Defending, rim running, rebounding. Those are kind of the 3 areas I think that Mick Cronin wants to see from him. Obviously, if he's open for a 3, they'll let him take it, but they don't want that to be a big part of his game. Mick Cronin says he wants 12 rebounds combined out of the players who play the 5. That's looking like that's going to be Xavier Booker and Steven Jamerson II, the transfer from San Diego, played for Steve Lavin down there. So, we saw glimpses of both of them in the exhibition game against San Diego. It didn't look great, but, that's a one exhibition game with 2 guys coming into a new program. So lots of time to get this figured out and adjust. It'll be one of the most fascinating storylines all season. Can Xavier Booker play the 5?
Steven Jamerson, a guy who wasn't on my radar last year. I was not watching San Diego, but he really came on late last year, started averaging like a 14-point double-double, like I think from February on, and looks really, really good to me. So what have you kind of been hearing about him this summer?
Yeah, he's got a fascinating backstory. He actually went to Michigan State as a freshman, not to play well, he wanted to play basketball, but he was just a student at school there. And interestingly enough, he wanted a walk-on spot, couldn't get a tryout, and then he wanted to become a team manager just to be around the team. And he couldn't. I think he went through some early processes for that and couldn't land that either. So. Talking to him on the phone recently, I get the sense that this is a very driven and motivated guy to kind of show the Big Ten, particularly Michigan State, what they're missing, right? So I think he's got a lot of good fundamentals. He's got good rebounding and defensive instincts. It's just, can he take that to a higher level and compete in the Big Ten? And that'll be the question he has to answer.
That's a wild story. I mean,
Yeah.
How hard is it for a 6'10", guy to get a look from the team? Just walking on campus.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, I'm going to be tracking his every movement in that game. They go to Michigan State this year, which will make it even more interesting because obviously if he was either a guy there on the bench or team manager, that would have been his home. So I think he'll be even more driven to have a good showing.
So I'm sensing a little bit of just kind of pause from you to say how Booker and Jamerson are coming along? Is it just you need a bigger sample size? Have you been hearing kind of some hesitation from the staff?
It's just so early, right? I mean, but one of the things that, you don't want to jump to conclusions too early. You don't want to extrapolate too much too soon. But, both the guys that they lost are had good showings in their exhibition games. Adai Mara looked like a beast for Michigan, and then William Kyle the third for Syracuse. They both look really fantastic in their exhibition games. So if UCLA does not get it figured out at the 5, I think that's going to be an unfortunate storyline. Why don't you have these guys still in your lineup, and what happened there?
Was that there's not enough money left after we paid Donovan Dent, essentially? Or did those guys just want to change the scenery?
I think it's unique storylines for each of them. I think Adai Mara kind of wanted a change of scenery. I mean, there were some questions about his usage in minutes last year with Coach Cronin. I mean, there were some other things as well. Don't think it was a completely one-sided situation. William Kyle, I'm a little bit shakier on the reasons for that. He didn't play much and was kind of struggling when he got in. So I think it was clear that he wanted a bigger opportunity somewhere else.
Yeah. Um, let's go into Jamar Brown coming over from Kansas City. 17 points a game, took 6 threes, hit 40% of them, 6'5". Is he ready for this jump to the Big Ten? Is he a guy who can be a legit spark plug off the bench?
I think so, just from that one game, and you don't want to extrapolate too much positive or negative, but he was a real plus and a positive for UCLA in that exhibition win over San Diego State. He made all 3 threes. He got in there and got rebounds. Like Coach Cornyn said, that he rebounds the best of pretty much any guard, that he's seen, and I think he backed that up in a big way. He just has natural instincts, and he'll fight for everything. So that was a real positive. He started in that game because Eric Daly was out with a minor knee injury that's not supposed to keep him out long. But a great first showing for Jamar Brown, a sign of what he can do for this team.
Trent Perry mixed in a bit off the bench as a true freshman last year. He was a guy that I remember you speaking highly of when we talked a year ago. Has there been growth for him, and what does he look like in a bigger role this year?
Yeah, just confidence is the big thing with him. He always had the skills, just getting in there, not swimming, not thinking too much. He looked like he was a lot more aggressive too, and just confident in everything he does. So if you can keep that up and really do that, he could be a starting level player. I think in a lot of teams. I think UCLA's got too much depth in the backcourt right now for him to really do that. But he'll be a huge asset and possibly the sixth man for this team.
Okay. Those top 8 names are who I kind of had as the top 8. Who else? You mentioned having more guys than that. Who's next?
Yeah, I mean, one guy that's a couple of guys that could really add something are Eric Franey. He redshirted last year. He's a guard from Corona Centennial who was former high school teammates with Donovan Dent. He's got the toughness. I think Cronin has said he's one of the toughest guys he's ever coached, and the guy hasn't played a minute of basketball because he was redshirting last year. So he'll be someone to watch. I think he could add a new element. And then Brandon Williams, interesting post player who played a starting role as a freshman and then redshirted last year because they thought they had enough depth. Now he's back, and he could be an X factor off the bench. Didn't have a big impact in the San Diego State game, but he's got a lot of potential. And he could be somebody who comes in for some spot minutes and hits a few shots or grabs a few rebounds.
Do you expect, you mentioned kind of the Donovan Dent pitch of stylistically how UCLA could look different? Is there anything else with, whether it's offensive spacing, the way they'll be guarding, anything like that?
I think it's too early to say. I mean, I think that'll be the big change. I mean, I guess, if you play fast, there could be, more turnovers and you have to adjust defensively. I think that's one of the things I'll be watching early. Can Donovan Dent cut down on those turnovers? Because even in the game against UCLA last year when he played great and New Mexico beat UCLA, he had 9 turnovers. So that's the kind of thing that you cannot have with your point guard. Changes the dynamics of the game. So I'll be watching that very closely to see if he can keep that number way down.
And then from a leadership chemistry aspect, is Donovan Dent coming in here as the leader, or is it Bilodeau and Daly who were here last year?
I think it's both. I mean, Dent's truly, he's a senior. He's the point guard. He's the leader of the team. But then I do think guys like Eric Daly, who took on that role in his first year at UCLA, as somebody who wasn't afraid to speak up. And then Bilodeau, who's a great scorer, Sky Clark, who's just this kind of like understated, steady presence. When he talks, people listen. So they got candidates for a lot of those guys, but I think unquestionably Dent will be the primary factor there.
And then defensively, Kobe Johnson meant so much to this team last year. I know a lot of teams, obviously, every team has to deal with turnover these days more than ever, but has someone kind of emerged as who could be that best defensive stopper?
Well, I mean, I think Coach Cronin wants Dent to be that stopper, right? Now, like I alluded to earlier, that was one of his big messages to him: be a maniacal. That was a word he used: maniacal defender with his relentless effort. So he's going to be the top of the defense as the point guard. Sky Clark seems to, as I mentioned, be more athletic, which is going to help his defense. And then, moving Daly and Bilodeau down a notch to the 4 and the 3 should, in theory, help them as well. So I think this will be a better defensive team than last year, too. Will it be top 20? Will it be elite? I don't know, but it has the potential to be.
Yeah, if you take away the one losing season, obviously that's not what to expect from Mick Cronin. 22, 27, 31 wins before that, and 23 last year. Those three of the last four defenses have been top 16. So it's kind of the way I see it is, if you get that top 20 defense and Dent and some more shooting opens up the offensive ceiling of this team, that's where UCLA can be what they were. Like the names I mentioned, like when they had Hawkes and some of these guys in the NBA right now. So
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what the metrics are. I think somebody's pointed out that like you have to be in the top. No team that hasn't either been in the top 40 in both offense and defense and Ken Palm, uh, excuse me, has ever won a national title in the
it might
last.
be it might be 20 where there's like the top 20 for both, but like there's like a
Yeah,
couple outliers.
yeah. There's some cutoff line where if you're not in there, you're not going to win. And so I think UCLA will safely be inside the cutoff line for each of those categories, which is going to give them a chance to do what they want to do.
Any other nuggets from this summer? Things you've heard from the staff? Anything to watch out for?
I mean, I think the schedule's kind of interesting. I mean, this is the second or third year in a row where they really don't have a marquee home game, and I kind of understand non-conference, and I kind of understand why it is. Now they're playing these kind of neutral site NIL showcase games as fundraisers, but I think it really hurts the team and it hurts kind of the memory of what UCLA basketball is and should be to not have at least one of those games a year. I mean, we saw Villanova open the season here. Oh, well, God, that was four years ago now, and it was just a crazy, exciting atmosphere. And now all those games are going to be at neutral sites, and I think that's unfortunate. I understand why it happens, but I'm a little bit on a soapbox here. But I feel like you need to have one of those a year, and we're just not seeing it now. Gonzaga, Arizona, and Cal will all be neutral site games this year. So that's one thing I would like to see UCLA kind of pivot back to.
Last question. I remember Mick having. I mean, he's awesome in press conferences. Like he's very entertaining to me,
Yeah.
and he had a bite last year. I think it was after losing to Rutgers or something, or maybe they'd be. I don't know. It was around that time, and he's like just so pissed about the travel of the Big Ten, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously it makes no logical sense that a school in LA is having to go play a conference game against a school in New Jersey. Do you think a year under his belt for UCLA and I guess the other West Coast teams for that matter, is there lessons learned about just kind of the way to structure our days and travel and practice, like just getting more used to this schedule that they could reap some benefits of this year?
Well, I think the biggest adjustment was the 2 days between games because in the Pac-12 it was almost always Thursday, Saturday, and now it's kind of Wednesday, Saturday, or Friday, Monday, or whatever it is. So I think maybe just learning how to best maximize that extra free time between the games is going to be the thing. I don't think there's any magic pill as far as coming out a day earlier for the first game or anything that way, but I would say, like just better utilize, and not to say they didn't utilize it well. I'm just saying, now he knows what that process is like of 2 days between games. Maybe he goes easier or harder or adjusts his practice meeting schedules, things like that. I think that's where the biggest opportunity is going to come.
I think that's everything I've got. I think this is going to be an exciting team. And Mick Cronin is like I said, you have an outlier season in 2024, but just as consistent as it gets. What he demands on the defensive end, and just his intensity on a nightly basis has made me a fan of him. And I'm excited to watch this team. Ben, thanks for coming on and breaking it down with me.
Thanks for having me on.